Hello, good evening. Welcome to part 2 of the video about my time at Charlton House in Dawlish, a tenant of these charlatans, sanctuary housing. It's same day as the first video, so I'm recording it straight after. It's just after 8 p.m. on St. Patrick's Day, Monday the 17th of March 2025. So in part 1, I told you about the shenanigans of the drug dealer, who I'm calling Kevin, not his real name, about the death of his girlfriend, Sarah, of a drugs overdose, not her real name, the death of a second lady by the name of Emma, not her real name, who fell off a cliff, and of Andrea, her real name, who did a runner, owing thousands of pounds of rent, which caused Emma to be evicted, and probably, in hindsight, if that wasn't the case, who knows? You can only guess, but Emma would still be alive today, but who knows? So as we continue the story, so Kevin's been arrested for beating up his girlfriend Amy. Amy's done her own and she doesn't want her to know. I've made a police statement. The police said they'll look after me, they didn't. So in the end, after several weeks of trying and failing, eventually I insisted, I refused to leave the police officer in Dawlish. Either one or two ways I would leave: in handcuffs, or after my statement had been withdrawn, and eventually it was withdrawn. And the sad thing about it was I was threatened by a number of people, drug users in Dawlish. One woman particularly on the lawn in Dawlish, for those of you who know the area will know what I'm talking about, by the river. It's called Dawlish Water, the river. That's famous for its black swans, that's where they reside. Saying that if Kevin goes down, I'm dead meat. For my own safety, I was scared, so I saw no other option than to withdraw my statement. So the only winner in this is the violent thug, Kevin. So things went on year by year, year after year, every time I would come back, say this is not my full-time home. Living part-time in Brighton, living part-time in Devon. As I say, look after my elderly parents. But when I come back, you hear stories, and I was spending nights here, like 3 nights a week I was spending here. There was no room at my parents' house. My dad had his room on his own. My mum had which used to be my room, and my brother had his room. It was a 3-bedroom house. And I had a bed here, so, it was only I think it's a 12-minute train ride away, so it's very close. I can be home in half an hour from leaving our home. So I chose to continue in this flat, which I'm in the process now of terminating the tenancy. It's a bit complicated, but I won't bore you with the details of that because it's not relevant to this true story. So the drug dealing continues, the antisocial behaviour continues, the noise, the banging, the shouting, the swearing, people trying to break into other people's flats, not through burglary, but because they're desperate for their fix. They're so doped up on goodness knows what, they can't tell the difference between a number 8 on the door and a number 14 on the door, for example. It's, again, you couldn't make it up, it's so farcical. But anyway, eventually I'm going to say this went on for several years. So we're talking about Emma's death. Remember, she's the one who fell off a cliff. Following her death, following Amy's violent assault, Amy moved back with Kevin. They lived there for a few years. So I'm going to say 2019, I'm going to say now. Again, it could be 2018, but I don't believe it was before COVID. It was during or after COVID, so I believe it was, and COVID was March, around about now, the lockdown began, middle of March 2020. so I believe it's for that time, when, again, news around Dawlish, gossip around Dawlish, was that a woman had been found dead in an underground car park opposite the Dawlish railway station. And as the hours and the days went by, it was confirmed that the person who had died was Amy. So Amy is now dead. It's my understanding she went to, as she did every day, she went to Boots, left here about 5 to 9, Charlton House, went down to Boots to get her methadone prescription at 9:05, and she came back. She had a row with her boyfriend Kevin, and she stormed out, and I don't know what the row was about, but it must have been quite a bad row, because within an hour of her storming out of the house, she was found hanging from a beam in this underground garage opposite the railway station. She was a drug addict. She was born a drug addict. She was on drugs, and her supplier, you guessed it, was Kevin. So now we have a situation where Kevin is responsible for supplying drugs to Sarah, who's now dead due to a drugs overdose. Remember Sarah being the first tenant who Kevin moved in as her lodger / boyfriend. Remember Emma was the second person who was lived in a different flat at Charlton House, but was a drug user who died in mysterious circumstances after losing everything. Dead. And now we have Amy dead. 3 women dead, all connected through Kevin. 2 of them being his girlfriend, Sarah and Amy, and Emma being a user who bought her drugs off Kevin. But it gets worse. It just carries on and on and on. And then after COVID, oh, by the way, during COVID, during lockdown, there's still people coming around all hours, day and night. We're on lockdown. We're not supposed to go out for, we're in lockdown. And people are coming around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, even middle of the day, coming around to buy their drugs. And it was just farcical, and the police did nothing. The police did absolutely nothing. The housing association were aware, and they did nothing. So over a decade, 3 women are dead, and a guy is still dealing drugs from one of their properties, Sanctuary Housing properties. The police do nothing, Sanctuary Housing do nothing, nobody is bothered, no one gives 2 monkeys. And it continues. So, after COVID, and then a breakthrough. Finally, some good news. I learn in June of 2023 that there is a trial taking place at Exeter Crown Court, and it involves county lines, drugs, and this I know to be true and 100% true and accurate, because I've seen the court transcript, I've seen the court records of this. So this is according to the court records. And it starts in Merseyside in Liverpool. Merseyside police have been trailing a gang for at least 2 years. And that trail will led them all over the country, including to Devon, to South Devon. And for the previous 18 months, so we're talking around Christmas time 2021, I would say, beginning of 2022, Kevin was one of several people under surveillance, and in the 18th month investigation led by Merseyside Police. Our police wouldn't be capable of doing that. They wouldn't be capable of putting sweeteners in a cup of coffee, for goodness sake. Absolutely useless. But anyway, he was put under surveillance, was Kevin, as were others, and footage was taken, video camera film, photographs were taken, and it was obviously visitors were coming on a regular basis. He was literally cars were coming outside, not on the premises, Charlton House, but nearby, and he would receive packages, cars would come, someone would hand him a package and they'll drive off, and stuff like that was. And the rumour is that he was actually arrested in a public toilets in Dawlish, in the centre of Dawlish, on the green, and he had a substantial amount of Class A drugs, cocaine and heroin, and he also had over £3,000 in cash in his pocket. So he was arrested, charged, and there were, I believe, 26 of them involved, and the court transcripts say £1.3 million of heroin or cocaine was transported from Liverpool into Devon alone. 1.3 million, just the Devon arm of this nationwide operation. £1.3 million, substantial lot. That's how bad and deep this was. And at the trial lasted 6 weeks. When I say the trial, I mean Kevin's trial. I believe Kevin was one of about 10 involved in the 6-week trial, because he didn't obviously try all 26 people at once. And all were tried at Exeter Crown Court. And he pleaded not guilty. He didn't give any evidence, didn't say a word in court, but a jury found him guilty of intent to supply heroin and or cocaine. And he was released on bail pending probation service reports, and was due to be sentenced at a later date. Basically, the reason for that delay was because the judge decided she wanted to have everyone tried, found guilty, found innocent, before she started sentencing the gang. So that happened, and it was the middle of November 2022 when the sentencing began. And funny enough, Kevin was the very last of the 26 people to be convicted. And this, you couldn't make it up. The judge said in a summing up before she sentenced Kevin that she was considering a drug rehabilitation order as punishment, because it came out in the court records that he had a habit, and he was using 5 wraps a day, and his habit was a £350 a week habit. That was in the court records, court documents. So you talk about a very heavy, serious user. Also, obviously, a major supplier. He supplied, as I say, a hell of a lot of Class A drugs around the South Devon area, from those who know, from Newton Abbot, Tim, Dawlish, all the way up to the edge of Exeter, that area. And on the Monday, at the end of November 2022, the judge said that she was considering a drug rehabilitation order rather than a custodial sentence. But again, this is so serious, but it's so funny. It's so pathetic, really. On 2 of his probation appointments to see if he was suitable, Kevin fell asleep during his probation meetings with his probation officers, because he was so whacked up with whatever substances he'd taken. So therefore that offer was withdrawn, and thankfully Kevin was sentenced to be in the end of November 2022 to 3 years in prison. So finally the residents at Charlton House in Dawlish, the sanctuary housing residents, have got peace. And no credit goes to Devon Cornwall Police. I know in speaking... Sorry, we may have had a slight interruption there. I accidentally pressed the wrong button on my laptop. But back to the story. So he was given a 3-year prison sentence at the end of November 2022. So we all live happily ever after, and peace has broken out. No more drug dealing, and quiet is now here. Peace and quiet at last for the residents. The landlord in January did a I'm not sure we call it a Skype call or whatever with Kevin, who was in prison obviously, and it was to see whether he would voluntarily give up the tenancy of his flat, because obviously he couldn't live ever, because he was obviously not living here, he was living in prison. 3 years imprisonment. And surprisingly, Kevin decided to voluntarily give up his tenancy, so he had to give a 4 weeks notice. Just a side note, that was in January 2023. We're now into March 2025, and the flat is still empty, and there's a housing crisis. How pathetic is that? Yeah, that's sanctuary housing for you. But anyway, then on, we're going to 2024 now, so Kevin's safely locked away behind bars. And then of course we have Mr. Keir Starmer, our wonderful Prime Minister, who was it the 4th of July, I believe, 5th of July, the general election, gets voted in. And in September, he decides that prisons are so overcrowded and full, he decides to release people early on who have served 40% of their sentence. And bizarrely, Kevin was one of those people who was freed early on an electronic tag. So this is where it gets absolutely pathetic. Kevin, been released from prison after serving 10 months of a 3-year sentence, moves in then with his girlfriend, his new girlfriend, a new woman who had come onto the scene in a different flat. I'm going to call her Carol. So he moves in with Carol. He moves in with Carol as her lodger. So he's back to the scene of his crimes, basically, and he's back dealing again. Again, there's outrage, and yet I personally contacted the probation service to think, what the hell is he doing? He's terrorised the block of flats for over a decade. His drug dealing, his shenanigans, his customers, etc. And why is he doing back in here? The probation officers service, they blamed the police. The police blamed the housing association. Pass the parcel. Everyone blamed each other. No one took responsibility. The result was he's back dealing drugs. Then we turn, so that is in October, end of September. He's released in the middle of September. He was released 2024. So then he's back living with girlfriend number 3, Carol. Now, I was away from Charlton House for about best part of a month. I would say between 20 and 25 days I was away. And I came back just to check the place, because I'm still under my name, I'm still paying my rent on it. I use it like as an office occasionally, and obviously I don't sleep here now, but that's my sleeping arrangements aren't part of this video. But when I came back the I believe it was either I think it was the second week in February. I came back beginning of January. We're talking around early January, certainly before the 10th of January this year. I came back to check post and everything to check everything was okay, which it was. It was secure, no issues. But then I come back in the first week in February, so we're talking about 6 weeks ago, and I'm talking to one of the neighbours. And this neighbour who lives in another block, we're talking, and for those of you who followed my videos prior to me taking them off YouTube, the videos where I sued these cowboys for breach of my tenancy agreement, which again I'm not going to go into, and they had painted the whole place, and someone had written graffiti on the walls, and the graffiti said, "Me mum is dying. MIMUMISDIYAN. John." And this person, I was given a name, which I'm not going to mention. I didn't see it, I wasn't there. But I was given the name of this person, and he was a drug user who purchased his drugs off of, you guessed it, Kevin. And while I'm having this conversation with this neighbour, he tells me that Carol's funeral was last Thursday. This is back first week of February. And I said, "Carol? What happened to Carol?" "Oh, don't you know?" I said, "Well, no, I've only been here one afternoon this year." And he told me that at some point, I'm not sure whether it's day or night, but don't forget, we've now got Carol, who's the tenant, and we've got Kevin, who's her boyfriend, lodging with her at Charlton House. They had gone to sleep in the same bed, and when Kevin had woken up, Carol, beside him, was dead. Yes, dead. Absolute farcical, isn't it? Yeah. So now we have, just to recap this, we have girlfriend number 1, Sarah, dead, drugs overdose. Girlfriend number 2, Amy, dead, she hung herself, drug user, supplied by Kevin. We have Emma, drug user, dead, drug supplied by Kevin. We now have Carol, dead, suspicious circumstances. I must emphasise at this point, I do not know her cause of death. I haven't. I imagine at due course, I know these inquests normally take place about 6, 8, 10 months after the event. So I imagine it will be the end of summer before an inquest is held into her death. That's Carol. But now we have girlfriend number 3 and female number 4 dead, all connected to Kevin through drugs. And now we have a situation where Kevin's landlord, or Kevin's is a lodger of Carol, who's now dead. So now Kevin is living, well, I was going to say living alone in the flat. He's back here, he has a flat. And he's also having people living in his flat. I believe there are at least 2 other people living in the flat. And the police have been told only last Monday night, I was told there was disturbances, and I know this to be true because I've seen the phone records. The police were called by at least 3 neighbours just after 11 p.m. because of noise, because of someone trying to break into the building, shouting, "Kevin, Kevin, Kevin," and another man's name, "Ryan, are you there, Ryan?" the police were called, and they saw the police cars coming because the idiot police had their blue lights flashing. It's gone 11 o'clock at night, apparently. And the guy saw it, and he obviously did a runner before the police arrived on the scene. So now we have a bizarre situation where I've spoken today, this afternoon, on Monday the 17th of March, St Patrick's Day 2025. I've spoken at length to the housing officer, and it appears to me, she didn't deny it, she wouldn't tell me anything, because they always hide behind this data protection nonsense. But she has informed me that this Kevin now, potentially, because he was the lodger, is free to take over the tenancy, and he's still dealing drugs. Recent occasions, this year, 2025, on 2 occasions, I witnessed one occasion. There was people, whether or not it was the same person, I don't know. There was a person shouting, "Kevin, Kevin, Kevin." So you're talking about this person's on the ground in the communal areas between the 2 blocks of flats, and he's shouting up 4 stories high. What, 20 to 40 foot? I don't know. But let's say go halfway, 30 foot up. Kevin, 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 are you in, Kevin? And then a response comes, and I'll meet you by the bin store. And this is, around 9:15 at night. Now, you're not meeting someone in the pitch black by a communal bin store, are you? To discuss the latest football results, are you? Or the latest horse racing results, or goodness knows what. People aren't stupid. And these idiots, these people, I honestly believe they have blood on their hands. Sanctuary Housing have blood on their hands. Yes, victim number 1, Sarah. She, obviously, her death couldn't have been avoided. But to give a convicted criminal, he'd already been to prison for drug dealing, tenancy of a flat, knowing that the tenant, remember he was the lodger, died of a drugs overdose, and he, a convicted drug dealer, convicted criminal, they give him a tenancy. Then after Amy passed away, his girlfriend who was living there, remember the lady who hanged herself in the underground car park, a drug user, and they could have evicted. He beat her to a pulp. They had the grounds to evict him. They chose not to. And today, now, over, 12 years, 15 years, however long it is, he's still here today, causing havoc, causing mayhem, dealing drugs. And it just defies belief. These charlatans, these idiots at Sanctuary Housing, they feel nothing. Human life to them has no value. Human life to Devon and Cornwall Police has no value. I remember sending an email to a solicitor during one of my 4 legal claims I made against Sanctuary Housing. This was in 2015. I remember the date. And it was a woman solicitor called Naheem Sharma. And I said to her about the drug dealing. This is back in 2015. This was 10 years ago. And I said to her about the drug dealing going on at Charlton House, and that Sanctuary were turning a blind eye to it. And I said to her at the time, how many more people have got to die before someone takes notice? Well, since that I made that call, we've certainly had Amy, and we've had Carol, who died. So the answer is 2 and counting. In total, it's Sarah, Emma, Amy, and Carol. 4 women have died, and the connection is they are all drug addicts, and the drugs were supplied by Kevin. You couldn't make it up, could you? It's ridiculous. And I'm at a loss, this organisation, Sanctuary, as I say, they are obviously not fit for purpose. And where we go from here, I just don't know. I'm sort of lost now after that conversation I had today, where it looks like now that Sanctuary, having terminated the tenancy, are now going to give the tenancy of the flat which was Carol's, the woman who died end of January, beginning of February this year, 6-8 weeks ago, whenever, in suspicious circumstances. Don't forget, she's only about 40 years old. She's not in her 90s or 80s. She's not an old woman. It was a heroin user. As I say, you just couldn't make it up. More people are going to die, and nobody gives a damn. Nobody cares. And yet, it goes on. It goes on and on and on. It's never ending. All I can say is thank goodness, that when I sort out my mother's estate and we find my brother, he lives in my family home, I'm going to move him to family home with my partner, and the 2 adopted kids are there at the moment with my brother. I'm there obviously, but I come here to do private work. I do my job involves me. I work in Exeter. Sometimes I'm in the office in Exeter. Sometimes I work from home. I do stuff from home. And that home I do is in Dawlish, not in New Snabbit, where my family lives with my brother. But my brother, obviously, he lived with my mother and father, and we got to find him somewhere to live, which isn't easy. And then, obviously, my partner was lucky to be left a home, which sold for £450,000, a large 4-floor house. It had a 5-bedroom house in Brighton. She was left to her, which sold for £450,000. With that, we're going to buy my brother and sister out of my parents' property. We're going to live there, but obviously my brother needs to find somewhere, and obviously we don't want to force him out, so that could be a while. But as soon as he finds somewhere to go, then we'll move into that property and we'll buy out my brother and my sister. So obviously we get a third off the property, my third of a share. So I can't wait. I can't wait to move out from this shithole, these evil scumbags, Sanctuary Housing, who Craig Mole, I believe the chief executive is, is rotten to the core. This guy is leading an operation, unless of course I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I know he tried to defend Sanctuary during the Channel 4 documentary, Slum Landlords. He tried to defend the indefensible. So I imagine I would have no joy to him if I was ever to meet him. I'm quite sure, I don't know what I would say. I'd probably punch him on my nose, probably. I'm only joking, I would never hit anyone. So it's not going to happen. I'm not going to meet him. I just want to be out of here, gone, and just put this behind me, put this nightmare of Sanctuary Housing behind me. But I feel, for those of you who know about my gambling videos I done, about how affected I was in the death of someone I hardly knew, a woman I called Alice, who again committed suicide, a mother of 2, because she was a gambling addict, and she said gambling had ruined her life. Knows how I'm passionate. I mean, a question for you, dear viewer. How many people do you know personally that have died before their time? Died in their 30s, died in their 40s? I know of, I'm just trying to think through memory, we have one guy who died in 2019. We have one guy who died in the 80s, both of suicide. We have Alice, the girl from Brighton, and we have the 4 casualties here. So you're talking, what, 7, 8 people I personally knew who have died before their time in their 30s, 40s, either gambling related or drug related. You know, it's a travesty, it's a shame, and nobody seems to give a shit about it, and that pisses me off. It really does. And so I hope you've found these videos useful and just an insight into these charlatan sanctuary housing and what evil people they are. And please feel free to leave any comments in the comment section down below. And I wish each and every one of you to stay safe and to look after your family. That's the most important thing. I learnt that the hard way. Look after your family, because if you have this may sound a bit harsh, but if you say, for example, all I care about is my mother, my father, my brother, and my sister, and fuck everyone else, that may sound harsh, but think of it another way. If every single family, and everyone has a family, every single person ever born has a mother and a father, they'll have grandparents, they'll have brothers, sisters, they'll have cousins, aunties, uncles, you name it, they'll have family. If every family looked after their own, there would be no poverty, there would be no problems. There would be no problems. But sadly, for whatever reasons, families split up, and it isn't that way, and hence we're in situations like this. So again, thanks very much for watching this video, and feel free to leave comments down below, and until next time, again, thank you very much for watching my video.